nerdsreviews.com presents Nerds Talking, the podcast.
Yo, we talk about lightsabers, stunning your TV screens, what you want to stream, everything beyond your dreams. Want to talk about movies, sports, or even politics? Go ahead and tune into us, we'll give you all of it. Whatever you're debating, Xbox or PlayStation, Marvel or DC, Mac or PC. Teraflops when the movie drops, gigabytes, chips, RAM, no matter what it is, we got all of it. Welcome to the show.
Nerds Talking, the podcast.
Welcome to Nerds Talking, the podcast. You know the show, you know the suspects. I'm here with Carlos, Johnny, Marie, Hugh McCord. What? Hillbilly Hugh. That's a different one.
I just thought I'd throw it in there.
Okay. And our guest today is Schuler Johnson, a paranormal investigator. And that's where we're going to go first. We're going to go straight to good old Schuler here and his podcast. And everybody, I'm pretty sure everyone here has paranormal questions and everybody's ready, geared up to go. But Schuler, you tell me about your podcast and the title, where we could find it, how long you've been doing it for, and what got you into such a wide, as you know, it's probably a really wide like category, like so many of these type of podcasts, you know, are out there. What got you interested in doing this?
Right on, Lafayette. I appreciate that. Yeah, the name of my podcast is the Paraconnection Podcast. Been doing it for a couple of years, since 2018 now. And essentially the reason why I got it going on is because I've had a lot of experiences as a paranormal investigator for a while, and I found myself not having any type of extension or, you know, help whenever it comes to the supernatural and getting yourself into a bad situation. So what I'm looking at is basically my podcast to be that extension, that 911, but for the supernatural and paranormal, because a lot of the time, even today in 2021, you know, a lot of people still laugh at that, you know, that they don't believe that the stuff's real, or they don't believe someone's going through anything. So it's kind of where people can share their stories like a campfire, but same time, it's more of like a helpline. And I've actually had a couple of, you know, situations and individuals where I could assist them. So it's actually turned out to be quite well.
And then I guess my thing is it paranormal, do you attack it more in a open-minded thing, a religious aspect? What do you see more of? Do you see more of like a people tied to a religious aspect, or just being open to it? And what's the main, I guess, drawback you get from people when it comes to paranormal?
Right. Yeah. So for myself, it's more open-minded. You know, I was raised as a Christian, pretty, you know, down to earth, simple, you know, going to church and everything. But I never really took religion one-on-one or clinged to it all too, you know, closely like that. So over the years, I just really didn't pay attention to anything like that up until, you know, 2010, 2011. I started hanging out with different friends, getting into high school, and ghost adventures and, you know, paranormal state, all that stuff was kind of hot at the time. And that became something that I became aware of. And that kind of piqued my interest a little bit. I never really cared about ghosts. I was more into, you know, cryptids and the monsters that you can actually see. But over time, I started to question if it was real, and, you know, not just the ghosts and the specters and demons, but ultimately God and angels and, you know, all that other different type of, you know, categories in the supernatural world. So I wanted to put that to the test. And as myself, I'm more open-minded in the sense of not going full-fledged with religion. I want to just tie in the physical world with the supernatural world. Can we coexist? Do we coexist? You know, is one building haunted, or is the entire world haunted? So I try to be open-minded in the sense of anything's possible. It doesn't have to be Christian, Catholic, Methodist, Baptist, anything like that. It's all one, you know, the world is one orb. It's all unified together. So it's more of an open mind, most indefinitely for myself, but I've had all sorts of different people on the team. It's been very interesting, like a smelting pot. So bringing in different types of beliefs and religions has actually assisted in a way, you know, to kind of, you know, plug and play with different methods and experiments. But most definitely open-mindedness has helped, not only to try to prove that the supernatural is real, but also to make sure you're not losing your mind and you're going to point at everything being a ghost. Hugh, some of the things that I've had, if you will. I'll call them things, but it goes along with, just a simple investigation. You go in with an open mind that nothing's going to happen, or some people, I won't lie, first couple investigations, I anticipated to see something, whether or not it was a black mass figure or being tapped on the head by something. But overall, it's more of not knowing. It's always the unknown. So a lot of my encounters that I've had, primarily with poltergeist activity, physical touch, even things following me home, if you will, it resonates back to a location called Central State Hospital. And that's located in Indianapolis, Indiana. That's a mental institution that opened up in 1848, closed in 1994. A lot of history, a lot of supernatural tie-ins as well. You can really dig deep into that. And that was one of my first locations. First location that I hit up back in 2011 was actually Crown Hill Cemetery. I had the opportunity to go with a couple of friends and walk around. It's one of the biggest cemeteries in the U.S., and that's located in Indianapolis, Indiana. But it wasn't until a couple weekends later we actually went to Central State Hospital and essentially walked around the grounds trying to get connected and seeing what exactly was there. Because, up until that time, I didn't even know Indianapolis had haunted locations. I didn't think about it. I didn't care. So with Central State, there's a lot that we can dig into. So if I start rabbit holing or there's something that you guys would like me to tap in specifically, just let me know. But right off the bat, there's several buildings at Central State. You can check that up now on the internet. And they're originally, at least, from the time that I investigated back in 2011, there was the women's ward, we had the men's ward, there was a surgery ward, the admin building, powerhouse, had a carpentry building, there was also a cafeteria. There's quite a few buildings left. Most of these buildings were left from the 70s. That's the last big update that they had. The powerhouse, however, that was almost original, early 1900s, 1920s. If there was any work done to it, you go in that building, it's pretty dated. You feel like you're going back in time, and you can tell, it's that industrial feel. Everybody's, playing with coal. There's the giant molten bowls, where that used to be the actual fire pit for Central State. That's how they kept warm. That's how they had steam going through. So you could really tell that there wasn't much done to that. But a lot of my experiences kind of go back to the women's ward and the surgery ward. There was a lot of poltergeist activity that occurred there. And it wasn't until several months into my investigations, actually, that we started to receive activity. It wasn't like we went on the first night or the first couple of weeks. It was actually months into it. And the sad thing is, what took it to actually bring out activity was negative energy. We went there, first 3-4 months, not too much happened. We're asking questions, trying to, get into the history a little bit, years, names, different things like that they may actually feel comfortable with or recognize. But it wasn't until almost half a year that we actually started to change up our plan. And unfortunately, we went with the negative route. And of course, being young teenagers, still in high school, watching TV, we thought, the way to do it was the cool, badass ghost hunter way, and that's being negative and trying to conjure them up. So there was some provoking, there was some different things like that going on that ultimately did bring the activity. As much as it was the incorrect way to do it, there was activity that started to derive from that. And again, it was primarily poltergeist activity. Rocks would be thrown. There would be small glass shards. There would be batteries. Anything that was in that local area, it was quite odd that, we were getting pelted with all these things. And, they're not electronic. There's no strings on it. We're down primarily in the basement of these buildings. All buildings had basements, and there was a 5-mile tunnel system that connected each building. And, that's where we found ourselves most of the time, was down in those dark tunnels, down in the basements. And that's where most of the activity was. Now, there were occasions where it would follow us up to the base floor, even to the second floor. And there was at least 2 times that I can remember it followed us to the rooftop. We actually found rooftop access to the women's ward, and we had rocks that were on the roof being thrown at us, and the scariest thing is you can see it from the ground being lifted up. And at some point, it didn't matter where you were, what floor you were on, what building you were at, even being outside in the courtyard. There's a courtyard in the center mass of this premises. poltergeist activity. At some point, it felt like it was starting to follow us. It clinged to us. And granted, we deserved it, if it did, because we were being negative, we were provoking, and we even offered our energy. So yeah, that's kind of a quick scratch on the surface. It's took almost, half a year to kind of get into it, but negative energy really started to bring up activity. And it was poltergeist.
How do you provoke a ghost or poltergeist?
Well, Carlos, with that, as much as I, suggest not to, anything that you can do that's personal, if you know of a spirit, an entity, or even a non-human creature that is allegedly at a location, or if you're trying to summon this thing, provoking can be anything from personal harassment, mocking something that they care about, cursing, challenging them, saying that they're weak, you're stronger, you're better than them, different things like that. And also offering your energy can kind of tie in. It's not so much provoking, but you offering your spiritual energy kind of gives them like a battery charge. But most definitely, even if you're experienced, and I say this on my own behalf, I would not recommend it, but it can bring the activity.
What was your favorite place to visit? And then what place are you excited to go to? And would you ever go to Bob Mackey's?
So Mario, I'm actually going to jump to the back end of your questions. Bobby Mackey's, most definitely. I would investigate that as much as my inner gut tells me not to. That's one of the first episodes that I saw with GA Ghost Adventures. Mm-hmm. I saw what was there, and whether or not their filming, has everything 100%, 110%, don't know. I'm the type of ghost investigator that I would rather see it to believe it. I'm a skeptical believer. I am a believer. I've dealt with things, I've experienced things, but I like to see it to believe it. But most definitely, as a paranormal investigator, I would go there at least one time. I might learn my lesson, but I'm not going to provoke. I'll tell you that much. One of the biggest stories I like to share, I've shared this so many times, it stuck with me that much. It's the woman in white, as I call her. I've spoke about her several times on other podcasts, and it's the one time that I've seen a physical apparition with my bare eyes. I didn't have any technology. Unfortunately, I didn't catch her with any tech. No video, no audio. No.
What'd you do? What was your reaction?
My reaction was just staring straight. And literally the best way to describe it would be everything slowed down. My ears went deaf. I stared at her directly. I could see in the background the leaves that were behind her were still moving. It was a summer breeze. I could still see that. I couldn't hear anything, but everything else felt like it slowed down. I slowed down. My friends, the three friends that were to the left of me, they slowed down. I couldn't hear them. The grass on the floor, on the ground, that slowed down. The only things that moved correctly was the woman in white and the tree leaves. I don't know why, but she basically popped up out of some bushes on the right-hand side of my vision, and she just kind of fell into place like smoke, literally like cigarette smoke. She had no feet. She had a full white gown, black hair down to the middle of her back. She had a face. You can see where the eyes, the nose, the mouth was supposed to be, but no detail. Complete. It was like a mannequin, but with a little more detail. There were indents. And her hands were strictly straight, firm to her sides. She didn't move. She was like an animatronic at a Halloween, haunted house. And there was no like human movement to her. She just kind of floated from the trees to maybe like 3 to 5 feet in front of her, which there were some trees like oak trees or whatever. As soon as she came up to the tree, she hit the tree, evaporated into smoke, dissipated. Like nothing. That was it. And as soon as she left, the craziest part was my ears popped. Everything else started coming back to. I could hear the wind, making that sound coming back to my ears. And everything started to flow again. I could move. I could focus on my friends being next to me. And out of the 3 friends, only one of them saw her. All of us were looking in the same direction, same time. We weren't saying or doing anything. They were completely quiet by the time I got my ear I don't know how you want to say it, my audio back to my ears. And I asked my friends if they saw anything. And out of the 3, only one did. And he started to describe what he saw after I asked him. And I started to finish his sentences because what he saw is what I saw. What I saw is what he saw. And so, a couple minutes after gathering our thoughts, we decided to go out there. Is about a good 30 feet or so away. I really can't remember, but I'll roughly estimate at 30 feet. We go to where the trees and the bushes were. We looked all over, up and down and around in the bushes. No one there. No animatronics, no people, no animals, no lights, nothing. Completely empty.
Creepy.
telling me. You're telling me. And, that also goes back to your question. Where did I enjoy the most of my investigations? It's kind of cliche. It would be Central State, but to kind of add in a little extra spice, there was another location that I did enjoy that we had a lot of actual activity. I can feel, pretty confident that we received something. And that was at the Indianapolis Public Library, also in Indianapolis, Indiana. And that was a pretty old-timey library. They have a new edition in the back, but the front end, that was early 1900s original. And there's some history there, too, and most definitely activity.
Is that where you're located, is Indiana?
That was, yes. I recently moved down to Florida, just a little life change and everything. Wanted to get somewhere warmer. Lived up in Indiana all my life, but I hate the cold.
Schuler, I have a couple of questions for you. One, did you do any investigation or have you heard any stories or lore about the woman in white that you saw?
Good question there, Johnny. So specifically about her, no. We did not find any research, no documents, nothing like that. Even up to that point, I didn't even know that she existed or that was going to happen. I mean, a little side note, we were out there in the courtyard for about 30 to 45 minutes, I would say, a little under an hour, and we received nothing, and I can get my times twisted. There's even been situations where I've kind of forgotten time, and I know that can jump into aliens and ufology and different things like that. But I believe that's even possible with the supernatural, the paranormal and spirits. But at this point in time, I feel confident that it was under an hour, but we received no activity. One thing that we did know is, upon some of our research, there was at least one death that seemed to have been documented. And this is a story that I've shared as well with plenty of people and my friends over time. There's a little boy that was murdered by one of the original patients. I say original, but it was someone that was there prior to the little boy. The little boy shouldn't even been there, according to this document. He was hit by a truck. Of course, Central State having, medical practitioners and different supplies like that, they could assist him. And it was literally right outside of Central State, according to the story. So they took him there, they rehabilitated him, they helped him out. But while he was staying there and recovering, one of the actual, mentally challenged patients apparently didn't like the little boy. Something, sparked in him. They both were outside in the courtyard by a water fountain that they had on site at the time. And this man took an actual good-sized rock and caved the little boy's head in, unfortunately, and killed him right there at the water fountain and dumped his body in the fountain. So that's kind of what, intrigued us to kind of go out there, see if we could locate or communicate with the little boy, see if there's any activity out there. Because even on the grounds, there seemed to have been some type of negative energy or, historical moment where, energy could have been trapped on the land. But up until that point, we, even after, we never did locate or communicate with a little boy, at least not knowingly. But it was the woman in white that kind of came out of nowhere at our surprise. One thing that I did learn, this was like 4 years after I got to see her, and it was only the one time that I saw her. I actually met a good friend of mine. His name's Nick, and I met him at Central State during the day. Mind you, I was doing a solo, and it was during the day, and I met him and a couple of his friends, and we started talking. He was intrigued with the supernatural. He also likes the medical and the science behind Central State, and we started swapping ghost stories, and one of my stories became his story. We started finishing each other's sentences, kind of like how I did with my friend 4 years back with the woman in white. Apparently, Nick saw the same woman in white that I seen roughly in that same area. And, we didn't know each other up until this point, 4 years later. And we go back over to that area, talking about the story and everything. It's like, yeah, dude, you won't believe it, but there's actually a concrete foundation underneath these shrubs, because at this point in time, they started to renovate the land. They're building new buildings. They're renovating the old buildings, some of them anyway, trying to reconstruct. And some of the shrubbery they've been tearing out, and it actually displayed a concrete foundation where the bushes were. And Nick, he did some digging, told me that he believes what it was a changing room or some type of maintenance shed, because out there on the field, there was a football field, there was a basketball court. There were different things like that, for the patients to actually have some sports. So there was some type of building on that foundation, and Nick was trying to dig into it. But again, it's kind of like a a dead end. There was no lead to it, but we kind of came into the assumption that something could have happened to this woman, in that little shed, in that building. That's where she died. It's more of a plug and play, again, there's no documentation, but the fact that she came from the bushes where that foundation was, that's where her origins was for us to see her. And Nick seeing her in that same area, it just kind of picks at your brain of like, what happened, why this spot, what's so significant. So that's about as far as we got, but yeah, it stood out for sure, Johnny.
Has anybody here in the group ever seen the Man in Black? Growing up, I saw this Man in Black. He wore a wide brim hat, but you never saw anything. It was just a silhouette. And he was always in the corner, not like in any particular room, but you would catch him out of the corner of your eye. And he wasn't threatening, but you would see him and I would always look. And whenever I looked, there was nothing there ever. I always thought it was just me who saw the Man in Black. But one time I was reading my friend's Instagram, she was posted something on Instagram, and I hadn't seen her in a while, but she had mentioned how one of her clients had seen the Man in Black. And I thought it was really trippy, because then I realized, and it was the same description, wide brim hat, just a silhouette, looks like he's wearing like a trench coat. I've seen this all my life growing up, but like I said, never threatening, just kind of standing there. And when you look, it's nothing there. But it's just interesting to see other people have seen this, people I've never met before, with this exact same description that I have of what I see. So has anybody else seen the Man in Black?
Wait, first of all, did you see this when you were living down the street from me?
Yeah, yes.
Or was it in Canada? Like, I'm trying to
No, in Canada. I saw it in Canada as a kid growing up, and I saw it when I lived down the street from you. I saw it when I lived in my townhouse in Natomas. Yeah, I've seen this thing several times.
First of all, let me take this back a couple of years. When you see a Man in Black and you live 4 houses down, you got to tell it, brother. Like, you can't just fucking tell me there's fucking ghosts in my neighborhood. That's a dick move. No, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, and if you Google it, you'll get the exact same description I just gave you.
Yeah, Hugh, have you seen a ghost?
No. Not that I can think of. No.
How about Marie? Have you seen a ghost? Mm-mm. Okay, Johnny. No.
I don't think so.
I mean, I would
buy
say
into it, though. I buy
seeing
in.
a ghost. Well, yeah, no, that's different for sure. I mean, you can believe in the paranormal your whole life and never experience it, for sure. I also think, like Schuler, he's going out to investigate it, but also to experience it in some way. So his chances, of course, are going to be higher than ours. Than the guy that walks to his kitchen at night and all of a sudden there's a ghost there. I mean, that's more unlikely.
I haven't seen an apparition, but I feel like there was shit going on at my old house and my parents' old house. What was it? Just like things falling, things moving that definitely shouldn't have been. There's no wind. There's nothing going on. My mom would hear it too, and I tell her, "There's a ghost. I'm telling you, there's a ghost," and then she would just laugh it off and change subject.
That's how it starts.
Yeah, I mean,
they don't live there anymore.
Schuler, is your paranormal? Is it just about ghosts primarily? Like, it's not like UFOs or, people kind of include a lot of things into what paranormal is. So is it just primarily just ghost hauntings and so forth?
Right. Yeah, Lafayette, primarily for my podcast and what we do as a team to investigate, it is more supernatural with the spirits, ghosts, poltergeists, demons, angels, stuff like that. However, we do touch base on the podcast most definitely, like aliens, ufology, cryptids, different things like that. We wear our tin hats proudly, most definitely. The thing is, when it comes to actually investigating in person, the only thing stopping me and my team from doing that is the different type, at least from what I've researched, the different type of approaches, such as tech, the different types of experimentation and methods that you have to do, especially for ufology. I've looked into that a little bit, but you really have to jump if you want to follow up on like UFOs or have tracking or a pattern. I've seen a lot of people playing with telescopes and different radar, sonar equipment, different things like that. And I would love to get into that, because I truly believe, my team believes that there are different things out there, even interdimensional, if you will. But as for keeping up with them, it would be a little different. I think we may need more than night vision cameras. But then again, if there's been some people capturing things that they didn't go looking for or anticipate with night vision cameras. And but yeah, we're open to it. It's just something that we haven't really gone for ourselves in person.
Schuler, just out of curiosity, what kind of equipment do you have? And then this is kind of a side question. Do you believe in flat Earth? Well, what I'm trying to do is if Schuler says, no, the Earth is definitely flat, then I'm obviously going to take whatever he says and dump it in the trash. So,
it's a test. It's a test.
No, I just wanted to know like what kind of equipment you have, and then does that stuff run pretty high? Because I don't know, like a EVP or all that stuff that they use on Ghost Adventures and whatnot.
Right. Yeah, Johnny, I'm actually going to jump on your flat Earth really quick. Personally, I do believe that we are in an orb, a sphere, if you will. However, the only way I can I can see a flat Earth even possible is if somehow we are in a matrix and this is just a 3D model and we're all binary and ones and zeros and stuff like that. I mean, I guess it's there. If people can make a movie about it, maybe it's possible. We're in a little video game, whatever. But no, I do believe in what we know as existence or reality. We're in a big old ball.
But you may continue.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'll allow it.
Right. I had to get past
But he doesn't believe you're really here, Johnny.
Well, I'm okay with that as long as the Earth is round.
But yeah, for equipment though, we're pretty basic. There's some people out there that dump a lot of money into it, which I respect that, because sometimes having different perspectives with a lot of gear, that middleman with a lot of gear but not too much of it, and then some people are just using like cell phones and a compass, or some type of magnet. All of that is good because it shows you on different levels that you can get the same thing, or you can actually not get the same thing. So it really does help in my sense of experimentation and what type of methods can work and what doesn't. Preferably, I would love to have some night vision cameras just for the mere fact that I could be in pitch black, because from my experiences, it seems whatever I have dealt with, they are more comfortable in that realm. So maybe that's not good. Maybe that's some negative energies that feel like they have more power. They have that whole mask of illusion. They know that we can't see and they can pop out. I'm not too sure what they know or why they do it, but it seems like whenever it's pitch black, there's more activity from my experiences. So I would like to have some night vision cameras, but as of right now, my team, we're pretty simple. We use K2 meters, EMF detectors, DVRs, digital voice recorders for EVPs. Actually, we use our cell phones. We have Night Shot that kind of helps a little bit, but we typically bring out our 440 lumens flashlights to light the way. Sometimes we'll do blackout sessions where everything is completely off. Besides, we've gathered a lot of equipment. So for one thing, if you're looking to get into the paranormal or the supernatural, you don't need to go out and buy a $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 camera. You don't even have to buy a $500 camera. If you got a cell phone, you're good to go. Get a flashlight, take extra batteries with you, different things like that. But yeah, it's truly about the experience primarily.
Schuler, is there any you dare not go? Too sacred or too whatever?
Right. Johnny, as of right now, I have not experienced or had the opportunity to investigate a location that I felt was, desecrating somewhere at this point in time. If I was to kind of put my finger out there and lay it on a map randomly, I can't say of anywhere, but I can say a category, and that would be like Native American burial ground. I know that's probably cliche for a lot of people, but the experiences that I've read about and people that's, communicated with me, even on my podcast, that's had some negative, interactions with entities, not certain entities, but just with something in their apartment or their house. They proclaim they feel that it's on Native American burial grounds because of the nightmares that they have, or, some type of specific incident that happens. They're like, that this reminds me of some type of Native tradition or, local lore. I went to the library and there's a whole bunch of different info that they kind of gathered, and they're like, yeah, there was something Native here, and I believe we might be buried. I believe that we are on top of their burial ground. There's a chance of that. So I think that would be at least one type of category I wouldn't want to really mess with, just for the fact that it can be pretty violent. It can be dangerous. I don't want to desecrate anything.
Johnny, go ahead and ask your question. We'll wait for the break.
All right, because what does he have? Boost Mobile for his internet?
Cricket. He's got Cricket.
No. Are there any shows that you watch that are paranormal related? Are there any that you like, that you don't like? Ghost Adventures was always pretty fun to watch for me, and then it started changing over the years. And then there was the other one, Ghost Hunters, where the guys are plumbers during the day, right. And then they. Do you watch any of those, or and which ones do you like?
Right. Yeah, Johnny, it's pretty stereotypical, but it's the truth. Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, Paranormal State. Those were kind of like some of the main shows that were happening during the time that I started getting into the paranormal. But yeah, for the shows, though, it's primarily Ghost Adventures. And you asked if there's any of them that I really don't care for. Unfortunately, Ghost Adventures has kind of changed. A lot of people I spoke to, they've agreed with me that it's just not what it was. Up until season 4, I feel like they were at their best. That they were pretty legitimate. They seemed sincere, even though they provoked, that they were going at it, and they were really throwing in some passion. But after season 4, it just kind of seemed like they turned away from the more paranormal, aspect of things. There was more commercialized things, like, them doing things in a local town instead of researching or paranormal investigating. And that could just be a little, personal prejudice. I'm addicted to the paranormal. That's all I want to see. So as of late, I've kind of turned away from the everyday TV shows, and I've gotten more into podcasts and YouTube videos with different people that's, send in their information. They've sent in their stories to these YouTubers and podcasters, and they read them back. And these are allegedly true stories. And those are what really intrigue me. And that's what I try to bring to my podcast too, is everyday people, everyday lives. These people that come to me and that I listen to on these podcasts, they're pretty passionate. It's just everyday people sharing their stories. That's what really drives me.
We'll be right back after this with more with Schuler here on Nerds Talking, the podcast.
Taco Tuesdays with Nutso and Chuck the Rap Star. Every Tuesday on the Nerds Review Network. Grab a taco, take a seat, pop a burrito, it's gonna get deep. Subscribe and turn on your notifications, and don't forget to hit that like button.
Welcome back to Nerds Talking, the podcast. I'm here with Carlos, Johnny, Hugh. I'm Lafayette, and our guest is Schuler, a paranormal investigator, which Hugh has a couple of questions for him.
Schuler and I talked about this before, but I lived in an apartment in Fresno for a minute where the guy passed away who was living in there before I did. And you have the same situation going on at your house, right? Is it weird to live there knowing that the people who lived there before you had died in the apartment?
Hugh, that's a really good question. It really didn't bother me. And I think I do have a lot to think towards the actual paranormal, the supernatural. Everything that I've gotten into, everything I've learned, experienced, it's really helped me. A lot of people, you would think that it's gross, it's creepy. How can you find comfort and make that, house your home? Honestly, I don't think too much about it. I really, truly don't. And I think that's because I understand, the principles of life. Everyone will eventually pass. Is that the end to life and existence? Truly, what I believe personally, no, it's not. And I think that's why the whole, passing and death thing isn't too creepy or terrifying for me at this point. But what does bother me, what does set me off and makes me uncomfortable is when somebody has passed away in the house or any home and you start having supernatural activity. Things are falling off the wall, kind of like what Marie was talking about. Things are falling off the wall, objects are moving, even with seeing like the Man in Black, shadow people is a very common one. Men in Black, that's another topic that I've heard a lot about as well. There's a couple things. People believe they're aliens. People believe they're interdimensional. Some people believe that they're a demonic presence. If you're seeing and feeling things and, things are kind of shifting around the house, okay, now that person being deceased does kind of kick into reality here. It's like there's something going on that's not as natural as a simple passing, from the physical life to the next. Something's left back. And now you're living with that as a physical being. And there's this non-physical being or something that's obviously to some extent intelligent. and they're interacting with you. They're disrupting your life. That's what gets me uncomfortable. But as for the passing, I'm okay with that. But when it comes to poltergeist activity or, weird things, that's where I kind of, shake my head like that.
That's fascinating. That the man in black. That's fascinating to think of it as an alien visitor just sitting in the corner, watching. That's so.
I feel
so
a little. I mean, I feel a little uncomfortable because if there was someone, especially like growing up, sitting in the corner of my room. That means he's just watching me jerk off, right? Because that's all I did. I don't know, from 13 until yesterday. So, I mean, how long are you watching? And what are you taking notes of?
That's the questions you have for him. What are you doing here? What's your deal?
How long you been there, dude?
I got one more. Fire in the sky. Do you believe, Schuler? Fire in the sky?
Fire in the sky. Yeah, I believe. Well, honestly, I believe anything's possible. But when it comes to movie adaptations, I feel like sometimes you got to take it with a grain of salt. It's one thing for like TV reality in the sense of watching people, going with hand cams and, digging into it. But anything's possible. There's movie adaptations that are more docu style movies. And maybe that's exactly what we're looking at with Fire in the Sky.
Hugh's on a good topic, though, about paranormal movies. Which one is it do you think is the most believable that you've ever seen? Where you're like, or something that may have happened and the movie was pretty accurate, or just like I said, or maybe you just watched it going, yeah, I could see that happening. Which one was it you've seen that kind of blows you away?
Well, for me, it's Grave Encounters 1 and 2, especially number 1, and that's more for me in a personal take because it takes place in a mental institution. And again, I go back to Central State. Now, some of the stuff in the movies completely ridiculous. At some point there's teleportation that's included. And, as much as I believe that's another thing, teleportation, totally possible. I have absolutely no idea how to talk about that in, a realistic, aspect, but at some point in the movie, as they're investigating, there's teleportation that takes people from point A to point B in a whole nother direction. And for me, I've never encountered teleportation or, interdimensions going from one part of a building during an investigation to another part. But Grave Encounters, there's a lot of good, pieces that I feel are realistic. Like people are seeing these entities walking in and out of a room, a door slams, and you go in there and there's nobody in there. Like the filming's done really, really good. And honestly, the first half of that movie really takes me back to Central State. It feels like me and my crew are arriving to this huge building. You're going in, everything's, all industrial looking and just, it's got that 70s brick and mortar type of building feel. And it's intriguing. It really is. They're both good movies in my opinion.
But have you ever been to a spot where you were totally just totally freaked out, scared? You're like, let's get out of here. Something's not right. Let's just go.
Yeah, Carlos, a location that really made me feel that way. It was actually a cemetery. At this point in time, it was myself and one other friend, investigator. We had gone a little more south of Indianapolis, south of Indiana, and it was a cemetery up on top of a hill. And it was, it had a little renounce to it. People knew of it. Allegedly, there was some paranormal activity, not too much of how or why that it occurred. But this specific night, my friend and I, we were investigating the location. We weren't provoking. We were just trying to communicate. And when you're on top of this hill, it's okay, well, this will help. The name of it is 100 Steps Cemetery. And at the first point in time, when this location was built originally to be a cemetery, there were 100 steps. Over the years, the steps started to decay. There's like only 68, I believe. There was some renovations done. I believe they replaced all 100 steps. But you start at the very bottom of the hill. You go up the steps. On both sides of you, it's a hill going all the way up to the crown of the top. And there's, markers all up the hill, even up on the very top of the flatland. And around you is nothing but woods. Nothing but woods. You're completely surrounded, one way up, one way down. And as we were investigating, we're probably a couple hours in, not too much is going on. not even pictures. We get orbs, but that could be bugs. It could be dust. We're outside. It's summer. But what really stood out and what made us not want to stay there, especially only being two of us at the time, was we started hearing footsteps in the woods. And it wasn't just like, small movement or anything. It sounded like there was 2 or 3 people, like a group of people. So we got a little spooked in the sense of like, maybe it's a local or, somebody's coming out here to mess with us. We don't want any trouble, but you just don't know who you're going to meet out in the wilderness. And as we take our flashlights, we've got these powerful 440s, 440 lumens, and we both flood the wooded areas where we're hearing the sounds. There's no one there. There's no deer, no possums, no rabbits. This is, 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock. And, there's nothing out there. And, I mean, we can see clear as day with these lights, and there's no people either. And the footsteps, they start to take off, and we can actually hear the trajectory of the footsteps in front of us and then shifting off towards the right to the very back end of the cemetery. As we're hearing these footsteps just charging off, there's nothing there. There's nothing physically there to make the footsteps. That was terrifying. We were done after that.
At that point, it was bye-bye.
Yeah,
bye-bye.
Exactly.
Yeah, the question I have, do you guys have any trips planned to any I guess you could say famous sites or well-known sites in the future?
As of right now, Lafayette, no, we do not. There's been a lot of rebuilding for me personally in the sense of, the new home, getting some repairs, remodels done, stuff like that. Actually, this is my first podcast in almost half a year, I believe. Going on a little over half a year. So it's really nice to kind of scratch the surface again and get back into just the podcasting world itself. But most indefinitely, throughout this summertime, I'm wanting to try to rebuild the team, do some guest investigations. I'm trying to get Hugh on an investigation, actually, and see what Florida has to offer, because I've not had the opportunity to actually travel through or experience any of Florida's locations yet. I've been told to kind of go towards the East Coast. There's a haunted lighthouse, I believe, that's out there that's pretty well known.
Yeah, what would freak me out the most, honest to God, would be a exorcism. An exorcism would freak me out the most. Not that his experiences aren't freaky, they are, but an exorcism where you have, maybe the most evil of demons out there taking taking over someone and trying to exorcise them out. And I go immediately to The Exorcist. I mean, the idea of that.
But that you're walking into. So, okay, we'll take another break here on Nerds Talking the Podcast. Hugh, are you sticking around?
I got to go. I have an early call.
No worries. All right, Hugh, thanks for joining us this week. We'll be right back here on Nerds Talking the Podcast.
Hello, this is Lafayette.
And I'm Carlos.
From Nerds Talking the Podcast.
That's right.
Where we talk about everything from UFOs, comic books,
I like that.
movies, streaming services, conspiracy theories, ghosts, video games, and more.
Kick ass.
All on Nerds Talking the Podcast.
You can find us every Friday with new episodes on all digital platforms where you find your favorite podcast, Nerds Talking the Podcast.
Now back to the show.
Welcome back to Nerds Talking the Podcast. As the crew has shrunk, now it's only Carlos, Johnny, myself, and Schuler, and Marie, aka Mario, and Hugh, Hillbilly Hugh, have both vacated us. They were terrified, I think. I think he's got a little scared, a little spooked. And we're here with Schuler, who's a paranormal investigator. And, Hugh left us with exorcisms. Would you go to one if someone was to tell you, hey, there's an exorcism happening here? Would you like to join us?
Lafayette, I got to be honest, that's another take that I would be hesitant about, to be honest with you. I do believe that I would actually join that for the fact that it's something that I feel I should kind of understand a little bit more, along with demonology, because you never know when something could happen to you or a loved one, especially being a paranormal investigator. Not that I provoke or I offer my energy anymore, but there are things out there that can leach to you or a loved one. And to know how to push those things back, and do it the right way, do it correctly, especially to the extent that there's a full-bodied exorcism necessary at this point. It's not just spiritual oppression where you're being influenced or, you're having episodes where you black out or you're having negative thoughts. This is to the point to where this individual is no longer who they were 2 years ago or just 2 days ago. They're starting to do things, say things, practice things that is clearly not them, to the point to where they've almost lost full control, if not completely. And I kind of tie that in with suicides. And, unfortunately, it's more realistic to believe that people take their lives when they're depressed or they're anxious or, life is just crumbling or they lost everything. That is, it respectfully and unfortunately a true thing. And it's very real. But when there's cases that are very inexplicable, somebody that never shown signs or, some type of just odd case where this individual should not have taken their life, I feel like spiritual possession very well could be a culprit, whether they're looking into the thing, themselves, or playing with Ouija boards, they're practicing magic, black magic, they're investigating, they're offering their energy. I feel it's possible. I do. So in the sense, I feel it's something, it's kind of like a weapon. I would rather have a gun and not need it than need a gun and not have it. And that's the same way that I look at, learning exorcisms and having, some type of practice in demonology. I would rather understand and know those practices and how to help people and myself than not know how to and just be like, I've scratched the surface. So yeah, I would be open to that, most definitely.
Yeah, I think paranormal, I mean, to me, it's really interesting. I remember Johnny's old house that his brother still lives in. A family lived in there afterwards. And one of the guys that lived there told a story about how he would walk downstairs in the middle of the night or in the mornings and all the drawers would be open and all the cabinets would be open. And he'd always have to close them all the time. And he always thought it was his grandmother. Yeah. And we're just like, oh, okay. And he would tell us that a couple of times, like, yeah, this happens. I'm telling you, I wake up and everything's open, every cabinet, every drawer, and I'm like,
damn, cat.
Interesting. And yeah, I mean, and he's the type of guy, he was fully like, yeah, no, I'm telling you, it's a ghost, and somebody, that's doing that. And
well, let me start by saying that your source, the people that moved into my house after we moved out. He's a fucking idiot. All right. I mean,
that's kind of like, we all know the guy. We all know this. So taking him for his story, I mean, yes, you're not wrong, but he was, 100% like he was sold on it. You know what I mean? But
I take that back. He's not a fucking idiot, but I do remember every time he would tell us something, we would just say, okay, and then move on to the next subject because we didn't believe anything he said. So that's first off. But I don't know if I've had any ghost experiences or paranormal. My dad told me that one day he woke up and I was like standing next to his bed, like a paranormal activity, and he was all creeped out. He might have punched me. I'm not sure. It was an interesting childhood. But I on a couple of occasions where I've had really close people die, like the night before, I would have a dream and I would just wake up just feeling their presence. And then like the next day they were gone, type of thing. And I always took that as, they visited their loved ones before they left, type of thing. But who's to say if it was a predisposed feeling because I knew they were feeling ill already, or I knew they were going to go at any time, or if it's really true. I mean, I like to believe that it's true. I like to believe that you can visit your loved ones right before you leave. But, I feel like that would also hurt some people's feelings too. Like, because when I told my mom about it, she didn't, I'm talking about my grandma. So I didn't get a visit. She didn't love you. That's why. But
we don't know why she didn't get
exactly.
We know
Like,
why.
exactly. Like that's all messed up. Hey, did Uncle visit you last night? What? No. Oh, that's right. He
Because we still owed him money.
My bad, bro. Yeah. My bad.
Those are the only
Even vice
experiences
versa.
I've
Like
had.
Johnny owed his uncle money. Like even vice versa.
He came to collect before he left.
He's like, I don't want to visit Johnny. I owe him like $20. I'll visit his brother. Yeah, like I said, I can't say I have had any experiences like that. I don't know about Carlos if he's been like drawing
just the man in black.
fell off the wall.
Man in black.
Just the man in black. That was in Natomas, you said.
No, it was all different places growing up.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I saw it in Canada.
Man in black multiple
times.
You wouldn't come to South Sac though. The man in black wouldn't come. You got to wear red or blue in South Sac.
He travels well. Maybe you're dodging him, you know? And he's like, oh, man.
Maybe I owe him money. He keeps following me. This guy owes me money.
Yeah. I got to ask him a question about the NHL. He keeps dodging me. Like,
Schuler, besides your investigations.
How about you, Schuler?
Yeah, besides your investigations, have you had any
personal, like out of the norm type of things where even made you want to investigate maybe because something like, oh, what's this?
Yeah, no, I've never had anything prior to actually investigating, going to look for it. You know, that's really one thing that I started to consider, you know, as I started building my team, looking into different locations, stuff like that, was why hasn't something happened to me? You know, even with family passing away, can't recollect anything in the sense of having a premonition or, you know, like Johnny was speaking about, you know, some type of predetermined mindset. I just didn't think about that at all. It just didn't occur to me at all. That's really the weird thing. And it still kind of bothers me to this day how I didn't seem to be exposed to the supernatural until I actually opened the door. You know, it's like, what made me so special to quote unquote be protected, I guess, by it, you know, because there's, you know, children out there, you know, 2-3-year-olds, even infants, you know, on these nanny cams I've seen on YouTube where they're having some weird interaction, you know, a pillow is moving or, you know, they're crying or, you know, one was where they're kind of being dragged a little bit, like somebody was shifting their foot down the crib. And it's like, if any of that happened to me, clearly I don't remember that. My parents don't recall anything. At this point, they're pretty open with me, even about the supernatural. So I feel like they would share that. But nothing stands out. You know,
has your team gone out to investigate, and it was just somebody asked you to investigate, and it was just false?
Right. Yeah. There's been plenty. We've had residential investigations, and we've also had like, you know, more historical investigations where there's absolutely nothing. At some point, you know, we just learned it was animals, you know, something as simple as that, or, you know, it was just folklore. We would literally spend 6 to 8 hours in the dark, you know, talking to air, and nothing would happen. You know, it's kind of boring. It sucks, but I would rather come out, you know, telling everyone that's looking towards my team, like, hey, what'd you get? You know, blah, blah, blah. Those stories are crazy. Like, well, our experience, you know, 6 to 8 hours, nothing happened. You know, maybe it's more residual where it only happens certain time of the day, certain time of the year. Maybe there's something about us they didn't like, they didn't want to show themselves to. But we're always open and honest if we get something or not. And unfortunately, the locations we visit, there's more so no activity. It's more these bigger, you know, monumental landmarks that have some history to it that do. But yeah, Lafayette, we've had plenty of investigations where nothing came about for sure.
After that 6 to 8 hours, do you sometimes feel like telling your team, hey, guys, let's just run the hell out of here and go, get out, just go. And then you get out there and you're like, nah, we're just kidding. You give me $50. That's $50. There's nothing there.
Right. No. Honestly, there are some times where, you know, we're just kind of drained and we're just like, why even continue at this point? You really get bummed, you know, honestly, you know, as individuals, as people, you get bored. But we've never actually left an investigation. We've stuck it out, you know, to and through and did our best, even if we came out with nothing. It sucks, but yeah, it's.
And then how about reincarnation? What do you think about that? I saw a really good docuseries on Netflix about these kids that could recall a whole entire life, and the other loved ones that they can recall their lives said, yeah, it's literally everything they said is true. But when these kids hit a certain age, they could no longer recall any of it. Like when they hit like 12, 13.
Right.
But they documented these kids all up to a certain age. I don't know if you've seen that one on Netflix. It's really good. I mean, it was trippy because, man, these kids knew everything and every little detail about these past lives. And the family members that were still alive were like, yeah, that's all true. Everything he just said is fact. But when that kid hit a certain age, he couldn't remember anything. Zero. Which I thought was very interesting.
Right. Yeah. You know, and with that, Lafayette, I do believe, you know, in reincarnation. You know, the older I get, though, the more I can I don't know. I battle myself with that. And I have seen similar documentaries with that, especially with a younger child. This is an older one of the more originals, where he was allegedly a World War II soldier, I believe, or a fighter plane pilot. And, he could recounter, he can just remember everything. He could reaccount for everything that happened. And this is just like a little 4 to 6 year old boy. Reincarnation, man, that's another science that I want to understand, but I don't know how to explain it. Do I believe it's possible? Yes. Again, it goes with, if you can think it, I believe it's possible. Until it can be, in a concrete way proven, it cannot happen. People ask me, they're like, well, if that's so, how does it work with heaven and hell? When people die, they go up or down, wherever, because that's supposed to be the end game, the end goal here. You're supposed to hit either infinite paradise or infinite torture. So why and how does reincarnation have any room to kind of jump in? Don't know. I truly want to. Maybe that specific individual has a purpose. Maybe they screwed up. They got to come back down. They deserve another chance. Maybe they have a mission that they still need to complete, or they're going to complete. Whether it's they come back as a human, an animal, something living, I really don't know, but I do believe it's possible. But to me, that kind of bothers me a little bit, because with the physical world the way it is, there's some great things about it, but there's obviously some things that are just kind of a pain in the ass. I don't know if I'd want to come back, especially if the other side's a little more laid back, you can fly around, you don't have to feel sick and everything. That would be phenomenal. I don't know if I'd want to be reincarnated, but it's a very intriguing topic for sure, and I do believe it's possible.
Johnny,
about your place, did they disclose how the person died in your place?
The individuals that passed away, from what my neighbors shared with me.
You say individuals, plural?
Individuals, yes, with the S.
Oh shit!
At least two. It was an older couple, so not like a murder or anything intense or anything, but it was allegedly, from what my neighbors have shared with me, it was the wife. She passed away first, and she had cancer, I do believe, if I recall that correctly. And then the husband, he passed away several months after her, more than likely from grief. He too had some health issues as well, but it was pretty natural. I don't know what type of people they were. I don't know their beliefs or anything. The neighbors didn't seem to really, be able to share that with me. If they did know, they just didn't. But yeah, they both passed away in this home, and that's what my fiance and I believed. We believed that it could have been them, communicating with us, whether or not they approve with the home remodels, or maybe they're, trying to communicate things in some way or form. Not too sure. But one thing I know is the encounters that we had with odd smells, the sensations that somebody was walking in the room and watching you when, I'm on one side of the house, my fiance is on the other. It's only the two of us. We have no children or cats or roommates or anybody else at this point in time. And it was just odd. And all this happened prior to knowing that people passed away. So when I learned that, obviously it kind of kicked in and made a little more sense. And that's kind of where we started figuring out, maybe these odd sensations are a little bit more than what we're allowing ourselves to believe. So just to play it safe, what we did was we started burning sage oil, through a little diffuser, and we started to say devout prayers, inviting positive energy in God. We believe in our Lord Jesus Christ, and just to kind of fill our entire home, because we hadn't done that. And, I've been told by other paranormal investigators and other spiritualists, if you will, that it's always good to purify a location, especially when you move in, because you don't know who was there. You don't know what arguments took place. You don't know what negative juju's kind of left around. So it's always good to cleanse your domain, your home. And we hadn't done that. We've spent the past, over half a year renovating, remodeling, making the home ours, kind of getting busy with the physical world things. And we didn't take time to actually, get spiritual and cleanse and invite good energy into our home. So once we started having these odd sensations going on, that's what we did. We brought out sage oil, we diffused that, we put some vapors in the air, and we started praying throughout the entire home. And then within about 2 weeks, to be honest with you, a week and a half, almost that 2 week mark, even to this day I'm speaking to you guys, there's been no activity. completely no activity. And that's nice because I love the paranormal, but like I was telling you, it's one thing, to go out and visit it and investigate, but it's another thing to actually live with it and try to get some damn sleep. It's
you don't like taking your work home with you.
Exactly, Carlos. And that's work, I don't want to take any work home with me. I like to rest and have that clear mind. But when your work is kind of, I guess, coexistent and alive with you, and they're not always, that work can always not be the greatest intention, have the greatest intentions. It's not great to take home.
What's that couple that does The Conjuring? Like it's based on their
the Warrens,
all their investigations. The Warrens, yeah. Have you looked into their their stories and even their little museum they have with all their little relics and so forth? I mean, does that interest you? Like all their history that you've probably looked into their little relics and the whole doll being possessed and all that type of stuff.
Oh, absolutely, Lafayette. Yeah. When it comes to their actual, possessed objects, cursed, or, they have attachments to them and all that. It's most definitely intriguing. It truly is. It's something I've even considered doing myself, is having these, items that I can contain and show off and have for collection, mementos, if you will. But the amount of care and responsibility that comes behind it, you don't know how real it is until you actually take something home that is possessed, that does have an attachment to it. And that's something that I learned on a personal level. And to see their collection in their museum, I respect that. And I'm truly fascinated by it. But at the same time, it's kind of something that I feel from my experiences, with my experiences, I don't want to take the chance to go to that museum, say or do the wrong thing, and then something follows me home. That really that's in the back of my mind the whole time. I love this stuff. I respect the stuff. And for the Warrens, I mean, we're talking about, not only a married couple, that's awesome that a married team like that happened, but these are some of the original, big time paranormal investigators that paved a path for today's paranormal enthusiasts and investigators. They're coming from the 60s and 70s where, paranormal spiritual stuff is still completely taboo, or you're looked at as mentally insane, mentally, disturbed. But they were going throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, up until the point to where, they couldn't really do it anymore. And they were investigating, they were paving a path, and they were helping people, to their best ability. I wasn't there, obviously, I haven't got to meet them one-on-one. I haven't got to, speak with anyone that got to actually communicate with them, work with them. So as for all their investigations, I don't know exactly what they did or how legitimate. It's just like with ghost adventures, you can only see and do so much, but it's a totally different ballgame when you get to see it to believe it, or go back to where they were. And if, that location hasn't been cleansed, you can kind of, recreate or, have that residual energy, whatever they experienced, if it's still there, clearly you should be able to experience that too. But with them taking objects away that could have helped the situation. And that's a big thing that I respect about them, is they didn't just investigate, they went to help people. And podcast wasn't really a big thing. The paranormal wasn't really super big back then, but what they did do is they didn't care about the criticism. They went around, they tried to help people's lives be a little bit more normal. If there's something that they could physically take to contain these things, or if it was already there and attached, they took it away. So, kudos to them, most definitely. And it would be wonderful, to kind of, go back to where they were and even meet Mrs. Warren. I know Mr. Warren unfortunately passed away, but I believe Mrs. Warren is still alive and communicating with the paranormal community, and trying to still assist along with the museum.
All right. My final question before we wrap this up is your fiance. How does she feel about all this? You're investigating and even the ghost thing. Does it terrify her? Is she a believer, or is she just he's having fun with his friends? That's nice. How's that taken?
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great question, man. It's honestly, before she met me, she was not a big believer. I mean, in the sense of the paranormal, ghost, ghost and all the spooky stuff. She's never liked it, never cared for it, took it with a grain of salt. But she has actually joined me on an investigation before. We really didn't get too much. It was allegedly haunted woods in Indiana. That was creepy enough for her. But at this point in time, she's actually become a lot more open to the possibilities, at least. It's not her forte, but she's become more knowledgeable, more understanding, much more open-minded, just like myself. Over time, I became much more open-minded than I was, just a year, before the paranormal investigating happened. And that's the same thing with her. She's really taken a whole new perspective on what to anticipate, what to do, what to look for, different things like that. But whenever we started having a little, weird sensations and oddities going on in the house, she's like, we need to quit this right now. She didn't want to stick around and do EVPs or, take pictures. She's like, no. Get the sage, do your ghost thing and get it the hell out. Yeah.
Or do your ghost thing. That's I like that. Do your ghost thing. Come on. Right. Come on. Call your friends and do your little thingy and wrap this up. I got a walls to paint.
Exactly.
No, that's cool. Yeah. See, there we go. So before we head out, Schuler, let everyone know your podcast, where to find you, website, and all the information you'd like to tell the audience.
Yeah, again, the podcast is the Para Connection Podcast. You can literally find it almost on every platform. There may be a couple that I don't know about, but, Apple, Android, Google Podcasts. You can go to PIOTparanormal.com. That's my paranormal team's name, P.I.O.T Paranormal. Stands for Paranormal Investigations and Observations Team. Go to our website. All of our plugins and outlets will be there. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the podcast, all that good stuff. You can send us an email, communicate with us. You guys can jump on our podcast. We do take residential requests. We don't charge anyone for anything that we do because we are passionate about what we do. So we are that beck and call. So we feel we don't need to do that. But most definitely, we are open to the public and we like guest investigations. And if you guys are ever in town, Johnny, Carlos, Lafayette, by all means, join up. We'll do an investigation, see what we can find.
Oh, I love it.
An excuse to come out.
Yeah, I ain't afraid of no ghost. So
there you go.
All right, that's awesome. So thanks for joining us, Schuler, on Nerds Talking the Podcast. For Carlos, go ahead, Carlos. Say bye-bye. Sayonara. For Johnny.
See ya.
All right, good job. Wow, you really got to the point with that one. All right. And for Schuler, thanks for joining us here on Nerds Talking the Podcast. I'm Lafayette. Remember to subscribe, download, turn on notifications, tell your friends. And if you see a ghost, alert us right away, and we'll pass it on to Schuler so he can investigate your life. Thanks again for joining us here on Nerds Talking the Podcast.